Alright, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Master Reviewer back again with another review, and today we are doing a review for Lightyear. This is a first-time watch for me. It is the spin-off of the Toy Story movies, and yeah, let us just get into it, starting off with the plot. So the plot of this film is that this film is introduced as being Andy's favorite movie. Like, the film actually starts with like a small little text that says, basically in 1995, a kid, Andy, got like the Buzz Lightyear toy, and it was based on his favorite movie, which this is that movie basically. So this is basically the origin story of the character of Buzz Lightyear. So we basically start off the film with Buzz Lightyear. He is a space ranger. He is on a mission with his best friend. I think she's also his captain, Alicia. They're on a mission in order to just investigate this planet that they're on, and while they're there, they end up encountering the local wildlife and stuff, and they try to escape, but then Buzz fails to do so. Like, he tries to help. I forgot what, I think initially there was an autopilot there that was telling him, like, you're not going to be able to make it, so you shouldn't try to do it. But I'm not sure what the alternative would have been. The alternative, I guess, would have been to just like stay there and just try to come up with a different plan instead of escaping. So anyway, Buzz tries to help them escape, and in the process they accidentally break their hyper speed fuel engine. So they can no longer leave the planet because they don't have the hyperspeed to do it. So the film now becomes the beginning of the film, like the first half hour, is basically Buzz on a mission in order to redeem himself by creating a new hyper fuel, or he just has like science, like it's not just him, like everyone there is working on making a hyper fuel engine, and Buzz is the one that ends up testing it out. But because it is dealing with hyperspace travel, hyperspeed, because there's like time dilation involved, so every time he actually goes on one of those missions, he goes into the future basically 4 years. So that ends up happening, and there's like several missions. I think there's like 14 in total that happen, and in the process, he sees his best friend Alicia. She ends up aging up. She ends up getting married. She ends up having kids. She ends up, like, even her kids end up growing up and having kids of their own, so she becomes a grandmother. Basically, the entire space outpost is kind of growing up while Buzz is still barely aging at all. So yeah, that is like the first half hour of the film, and then it gets to a point where eventually Alicia, she ends up dying, and so there is a new captain, and he's canceling the missions. He basically decides that, okay, we're not gonna try to find a hyper fuel alternative anymore. We're not gonna try to get back to wherever I'm assuming they're from, Earth, or maybe not. I'm not exactly sure, but he says that we're canceling the missions and stuff. So while this is happening, I forgot to mention, but there was, at a certain point after the first mission, I think Buzz, he receives a emotional support robot animal, Socks, which is a robotic cat. So he is kind of helping out Buzz, and he actually does. Socks ends up finding out the formula for a workable hyperfuel energy source. So Buzz, in one last attempt to redeem himself, he uses this formula to create the hyperfuel source, and then he does manage to achieve the hyperspeed travel that he was trying to obtain. And in the process, he ends up returning. But then when he returns, I think it wasn't just 4 years this time. He ended up going like 22 years into the future. So at this point, So at this point, he makes it back to the planet. I forgot what the planet's even called. It's called like Alpha something. It's not that important. But anyway, he makes it to the planet, but then he realizes that things are a lot different now, and there is this evil Emperor Zurg from the Toy Story movies. Yeah, so Zurg has now taken over the planet basically, and is sending robots down to try to take over the space outpost in order to. I'm not really sure why, to be honest. He's like trying to take over I don't know. Honestly, they didn't. From what I remember, they actually don't explain like why he's trying to take over the space outpost, because later on he does reveal himself. Spoiler alert if anyone didn't see the film, but it is revealed by the end of the film that Zurg is actually Buzz, and the reason he's called Zurg is just because apparently the robots can't pronounce the name Buzz, which feels like a pretty easy name to be able to pronounce. So anyway, so it's revealed that Buzz, like his whole motive, Zurg's motives are basically to get the hyper fuel in order to go back in time and stop himself from like ever going on the mission in the first place that would lead to them getting trapped on the planet and stuff. So that's his motivation. But then Buzz, the real Buzz, I'm kind of like skipping a lot that happens. The middle section of the film is basically Buzz. He is trying, like, this is before he ends up getting confronted by Zurg. Buzz's mission is to save the outpost by defeating Zurg and then using the hyper fuel to help everyone get off the planet. And he ends up teaming up with Izzy, the granddaughter of Alicia, and these other two. They're on like the Zap Patrol, which is the junior space rangers or whatever. Mo and Derby. Derby is a criminal, I guess, because she stole a ship, and Mo is just very clumsy. That's like their personality traits. And yeah, so most of the middle section of the film is just like Buzz working with these rookies. Buzz stated at the beginning of the film, like it's kind of portrayed. He's being portrayed as like not liking rookies, not liking autopilots. He's very much a character that he takes the burden on himself to get things done, and he does not like working with others. So his kind of arc in the story is learning to work with others, especially like rookies that are not on his level. So yeah, anyway, so I'm going to skip to the end of the film, basically, where Buzz does end up encountering himself as Zurg. And so I'm trying to remember, though, because like Zurg's whole motivation was he ran like the hyperfuel. It has like a limit on it, so he only managed to get back to that point in time, which is why he's there in the first place. But he says that he needs a new hyperfuel source. So I'm not sure what his plan was, because he was just kind of waiting for Buzz to show up. So I guess he was just oppressing everyone he wasn't oppressing them, but I think it stated that he actually only showed up like a week ago from when Buzz actually returned. So I'm not really sure why he was even attacking. I know that like when he got there, the new captain, I think his name was like Burnside, he tried to get him arrested because he initially stole the ship. But I'm wondering, like, was he then just that's kind of no. So he like the captain tried to arrest him, and then he went back, and then he traveled like really far into the future to the point where it's like the technology was super advanced, and they ended up like stealing a ship from that time and then using its like robots and stuff to come back and take over. And I'm wondering if he just came back to take over because as a form of revenge. So I'm going to check that real quick. All right, so I checked, and apparently he wanted to go to the outpost in order to receive more hyperspeed fuel, but I don't understand how that would have worked if they didn't have the hyper speed fuel at the time. So anyway, I'm just going to ignore that. By the way, I think this is the first time actually that I'm recording with the dogs barking in the background while I have the new microphone. So hopefully this will be actually a good test to see if the microphone cancels out the audio of the dogs barking in the background. So hopefully this will sound good on the final recording when I listen back to it. So anyway, so I think, final act happens. The junior space rangers are working with Buzz. Their whole mission is to, stop Zurg eventually. Buzz, he ends up like exploding the hyperspace fuel in the process in order to make sure that Zurg can't use it, and in that explosion, Zurg also kind of gets defeated. There's a post-credit scene that shows that he's not actually dead yet. So anyway, then the whole Zurg ship ends up exploding, and then everyone's now falling back down to Earth, and Buzz manages to he manages to get on a spaceship while flying from a spaceship from space to the atmosphere of the planet. Like he manages to catch a spaceship, and then he manages to save himself along with, I guess, the rest of the cadets. And overall, just they managed to save everyone. The day is saved, but Buzz lost the hyper fuel in the process, and so but he ultimately decides that the Zurg Buzz, basically his whole motive was like, we're going to go back in time, and even if it erased all the lives of the people that they've built up in the time that has passed, it's like he says it's not going to matter because they're not going to remember any of it. But Buzz, his whole thing, like the Buzz that we follow, the protagonist Buzz, he says that no, we can't just like erase the lives of the people here. It's like it's going to make it so that Izzy never existed. It's going to make it so that like Alicia would have never gotten married and stuff, and she would have never got to experience the life that she had on, I think it was called, I checked now, it's called like Alpha Takini, something like that. So anyway, eventually Buzz, like he learns his lesson of, I guess, to not underestimate rookies or learn to work with others, but then another lesson, which is to, I guess, not a lesson, but like basically he ultimately decides that he is going to stay on this planet and make the most of it, and he's not going to try to like obsess over a past mistake that he made, basically. So that is, and then the film ends with basically Burnside, the captain of the outpost. He ends up arresting Buzz, but he doesn't actually arrest him. He says he should have him arrested, but instead he's going to reinstate the Space Rangers in order to protect the outpost, so that like in case that there's any more alien invasion or just invasion threats to their planet, then they will be prepared for it. So now Buzz is in charge of a team with the rest of the cadets that were in the film, and that is pretty much where the film ends. So overall, the plot, I'm going to give the plot, I would say, a 3 to 5. I'm going to say it was all right, but I'll say this. I like the first half hour a lot, the whole, like, aspect of Buzz trying to correct his mistake. I thought it was, like, really good the first half hour, I would say. But then the rest of the film, it does kind of, it's not as good, where it's just kind of like antics of Buzz and these other cadets, where it's like they're messing up a lot of the time, and it's just not as interesting as the first half hour, which felt a lot more serious, I would say, and then afterwards it gets a bit more on the goofier, not the goofier side, I don't want to call it goofy, but like a lot more, I guess, I don't know, just the whole thing of like, oh, I'm assuming that, I'm pretty sure this is a trope of like the serious character that has to go along with like all these characters that he doesn't want to be around, and then over the course of the film he learns that, like, you know, they end up forming bonds and stuff, and so it's not as good as the first half hour, I would say. So overall, the film, I would say it was all right, but definitely I liked the beginning of it a lot more than the rest of the film. Even towards the end, like, it still is not as good as the beginning, I would say. So in terms of the characters, Buzz is fine. I like Buzz. He is good. Socks is good as well. He's not really, I usually don't like the pet characters, but I wouldn't say Socks is really a pet character. He feels like an actual character himself, so I thought that Socks was good. I did not really like any of the cadets. Izzy, she's meant to be like the kind of the pseudo leader of the cadets, I guess, but I really just don't like her for the fact that she like made that one really stupid mistake where she, for some reason, like ejected the fuel source, which I just thought, like, a lot of the characters in this like movie had like this weird habit of not letting people finish their sentences. I say habit, but I remember at least like 2 instances of that happening. So I did not really, just that one moment where she just like didn't let Buzz finish his sentence, and so she just ejected the important fuel source that like was the main MacGuffin of the film. Like, I really thought that was just like such a stupid decision that, like, I didn't really care for the character before. That one bad decision just made me like not really like her character that much. So besides her, Mo is just he's just very clumsy in the entire film, which I don't know, he's not really my favorite, I would say. I did like Dale. Like, I didn't love her, I would say, but Dale was she was like the elderly person of the crew. She was a bit more entertaining, like being the trope of like the elderly character that's like kind of chaotic and stuff, that kind of character type. So I did think that she had, probably out of all the cadets, she was my favorite, I would say. So yeah, besides them, Zurg is not that, I don't really think that the motivation is there for Buzz, where it's like he's like, I need to go back in time to correct the mistake that I made, and he's like so obsessed with it to the point that he is like, he's going to kill the other version of Buzz. Buzz basically explains to him, it's like pretty logical. He's like, hey, you know, these people, they have like lives and stuff. It's like, we shouldn't be messing with that. But the other Buzz, like, I don't know, he doesn't do a good job of like laying out like why they should go back in time and like erase the mistakes. It feels like the only actual justification he has is so the fact that like he himself could forget about the mistakes that he made in the past, like that led them to that situation. So it just feels like very selfish motivations that he has for wanting to go back in time, and it doesn't feel like the greatest motivation. Zurg himself also, he doesn't feel, I don't know, I like Zurg in the Toy Story movies better, I would say, where he actually feels like a bit more of a, like here he feels very robotic, where in the actual original Toy Story, like in Toy Story 2, he felt like much more of a actual evil empire, evil like overlord character kind of character, whereas here he feels like a lot more robotic because he is just a robot in this, besides like the moments where he's, I guess, the Zurg Buzz Lightyear. So anyway, besides them, Alicia, she is good, I would say. I did like the whole aspect of like the comparison between Buzz, who is not aging, and then Alicia, she's like kind of the one that we follow, that we really see the change over the course of time, where we see Alicia's entire life kind of go by. So I thought that was pretty good. I liked pretty much all the time dilation aspects of this film, I thought were pretty good, except kind of like with the Zurg stuff, where it does get a bit confusing at times with how it's kind of working out. So, but most of all the time dilation stuff at the beginning I thought is pretty good. You know, I love the time kind of aspects of movies. Anytime it does like stuff that messes with time, it is pretty good. And so, yeah, did like that stuff. What else? Other characters? Let's see here. I mentioned the cadets, Buzz. I mentioned Alicia. I don't know. There's a few other side characters that are not really worth mentioning. So, yeah, overall the characters I would probably give like a, I don't know. None of them are great, but I'll just go like a 5.5. We'll say decent characters, not anything amazing. So, yeah. In terms of the settings, the space areas, I think they look fine, I would say. I don't really like any of Zurg's spaceship areas. Those don't feel great. The mining site that's like in the middle of the film isn't that cool. I kind of like, again, I like the beginning section where it's like they first get to this planet and they encounter the wildlife and stuff. I thought that was pretty good. And then the areas that were in the, like, when the whole space outpost starts being built up and stuff in like the first half hour of the film. I thought that those areas were nice, I would say, but then afterwards, it just, the settings I don't really care for. So the setting itself of like this world that we're in, of this space universe where they have, I guess, I don't know, hyperspeed and these space ranger suits that are equipped with like laser swords and all that. Like the actual world itself, I guess you could say, because settings are also supposed to include like the world itself. The world itself is, I would say, we'll go like a 6 out of 10. We'll be generous with it. We'll say the settings overall, we'll give it a 6 out of 10, above average. But yeah, it's definitely heavy loaded in the beginning of the film, and then later in the film, it doesn't feel as cool, the settings, I would say. So in terms of the visuals, it is, once again, similar to what I said about Toy Story 4. It does feel like this is like the era of Pixar where they're really going for like more realistic looking animation styles. And so similar to Soul, similar to Toy Story 4, I guess, to an extent. And so it does feel very much on the realistic side of things, and it looks fine, I would say. I don't really love it, and the visuals are all right, not really my favorite. I'll just go like I don't really like the art style. It's not really one of my favorites, I would say. I'm just gonna go like a 5 out of 10 for it. It's not good, but it's not really bad, I would say. I just don't really care for it too much. In terms of the action, I'm going to rate it for the action because there is a decent amount of action in this. I did like the laser swords. Those were pretty cool. The laser blasters, I was expecting it to be a bit more like what it was in Toy Story, where Buzz actually had a continuous laser blast that he would use against, like, it wouldn't be effective at all, but it was still, I thought there would be like a scene where he ends up like modifying the laser so that it would be a continuous laser blast instead of just like the regular laser shot that he would fire off. But yeah, the laser stuff was cool. I really like the laser swords. The laser swords were probably my favorite part of the action, I would say. There were some explosions and stuff that was fine, I guess. Some grenades here and there that were good. Zurg fighting, it didn't feel the best, I would say. He had like the hook hand, which I thought was kind of cool, but besides that, I didn't really care anytime Zurg would fight. And yeah, overall the action, I didn't really love it, but I would give it like, we'll go with 6 out of 10 just for the laser swords. I think the laser swords were good. A lot of stuff in the beginning where they were fighting off the plant life, as well as I think there were bugs as well. So that stuff was kind of cool, I would say. So we'll go with 6 out of 10 for the action. I actually wrote it in the worst category section, which I didn't mean to do. Yeah, so in terms of the worst thing, I would say probably the worst aspect was probably just I don't know, again, I don't really like the cadets that much. The cadets were not great, and yeah, I think like the beginning of the film is good, but then like the rest of the last, like the second half, you could say, of the film, or at least until like the cadets show up, I would say that the rest of the movie is not as good as the beginning, I would say. So, but I don't want to say like the entire rest of the film after the first half hour, I would say. So I'm just going to say probably the cadet stuff I didn't love. The Zurg stuff also wasn't the best, I would say. So I'm just going to say the cadets. I'm going to say the cadets I didn't like. Again, the Dale kind of was all right, but Mo and Izzy, them as a collective was not really the best, I would say. I'm just going to say the cadets I'm going to give I don't know. They weren't terrible. I'm just going to go 5 out of 10. I'll go a 5 out of 10 for the cadets. Also the visuals, I gave a 5 out of 10. So we'll just go a 5 out of 10 for the cadets and the visuals, I guess. In terms of the best thing I'm going to say is the first half hour of the film, which I actually would give probably like between a 7.5 to an 8. I would say it was between very good and great, just like a really good first half hour. I would probably give it. I'm going to be generous or harsh. I'm going to be harsh about it. I'm just going to call it a 7.5. I would say that the first half hour of the film, it was very good, of Buzz making this mistake, him trying to fix the mistake by like all the time dilation stuff, the whole aspect of Alicia aging. We get to see like time. We see time go by from basically the perspective of Alicia with her going through her life and stuff. I thought that, yeah, just the first half hour I thought was very good, I would say. So 7.5 for the first half hour, I would say. Any extra notes? Let's see here. There are definitely some references to Buzz Lightyear. If you saw the Toy Story films, there are like some lines that Buzz uses from those films in this film. So definitely a lot of references. If you are I don't know, I'm not like I would say like I'm a pretty big Toy Story fan, so I did notice like a good amount of references, I would say. I'm sure that there's some I probably missed though, so that's what I'm trying to portray. I mentioned the laser swords, they were pretty cool, the time dilation stuff as well, and I wrote down that this is kind of the fault of the new captain a lot of the film, because when the Zurg Buzz, when he initially arrived with the hyperfuel source, Burnside, the captain, he just initially goes to arrest him, and that causes Buzz to like go really far into the future and then steal the futuristic spaceship and then come back and then he becomes Zurg basically. So if the new captain, if Burnside just kind of like heard him out, and then Buzz was like, hey, listen, you can arrest me after, but just listen, like I brought the fuel source that you need to get back to the home planet. If like if there was like a quick little conversation of that and they kind of like sorted that out, they could have avoided like the entire film basically, because Burnside, he just like wouldn't hear Buzz out, I guess, and it was just so intent on arresting him, even if like the Zurg Buzz did find the fuel source that they needed to get back to their home. So I feel like a lot of this film could have been entirely avoided if that scene just played out a bit differently. I guess it was a flashback, so it wasn't like an actual scene. But yeah, anyway, that is all the extra notes I wrote down, so I'm going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. All right, so it ends up coming out to about a 6 out of 10, which would be above average, but I think I'd probably be a bit harsh with it. I think I would probably just call it like between a 5.5 to a 6, and I'm thinking on whether or not I should be harsh or generous with it. I think I'm just going to probably call it a 5.5. I would say it's a decent film, definitely. I went into it with the expectations of... I didn't really go into it with a lot of expectations. It's just a film I've never seen before. My brother, he said that he liked it when he saw it. I went into it. From what I heard, I don't know. I just heard that there was a lot of controversy about this film because they have like Alicia, she's a lesbian, and so people had like a problem with that. So yeah, that's really the only stuff I really heard about the film. And besides that, I think I saw a Shafeless review, and I think he reviewed it like a 5 out of 10. And so I would say that it was, just going into it, I didn't have like really any expectations, to be honest. So I would say it was a decent film overall. I would say 5.5. And so, overall decent, I guess. So that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, before we do the outro, actually, I do want to give a big thanks because we did hit 95 subscribers. So big thank you to all of the recommenders, viewers, subscribers, commenters, anyone that is interacting with the channel in any way, shape, or form. I greatly do appreciate it. And once again, if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I will maybe possibly check it out. But with that said, that is pretty much all there is to it. So let's leave it at that.